Hi, good morning. Welcome to a new episode of ET Retail Cafe by ET Retail. To make your Monday morning interesting and to make you dress properly on a Monday morning, we have an inspiration with us today. He is Sunil Kataria, CEO of Raymond Lifestyle Limited. Sunil, a warm welcome to ET Retail Cafe. So, before we start, I want to understand you have been into a retail and FMCG industry from a really long time. What inspired you to onboard on this journey?
Okay. So I've been a FMCG sales and marketing and a business professional all my life. If you see out of my career, my two largest stints, one a very defining stint of first of my life was in Marico Industries, where I worked and went on to become from sales to marketing as a marketing head. And then my last stint before moving to Raymond was again an 11-year-old stint in which I was a CEO for Godrej Consumer Product Limited for the India and South Asia business over the last 7-8 years there. So yes, the two most defining stints of my life, almost nearly a 20-year plus journey, has been in FMCG. And FMCG is a retail of a different kind in itself. You obviously don't have exclusive brand outlets there, but you actually go through a large mass of millions of indirect retail. And retailing in FMCG is again as critical because in fact, three modes that you really check in an FMCG business. One, the biggest one is the brand building. Brands matter the most. The second is product, which product differentiation matters. But the third and foremost is really how much you become accessible to consumers. And that's where the millions and millions of outlets of reach and retailing on a daily basis to indirect outlets, or what I call multi-brand outlets, matters a lot. So yes, I've been into that journey for a long period of time.
So FMCG, did it happen by any chance, or were you always inspired to be a part of FMCG industry while studying or maybe in school? How was it like?
So there's something like, my friends tell me, this is something when we are doing our MBAs, FMCG always has its own, attraction and a quotient. While it's not at all a glamorous industry, so I can't call it a glamour quotient, but it has got its own attraction to be an FMCG market. And I guess that's true even today in a B school, even though now there are a hell of a lot of opportunities available, especially from tech side, Obviously in our times, I'm talking 3 decades back, you didn't have the tech startups, you didn't have digital at all in play. So yes, this was always my first choice that I want to get into FMCG. I want to sell. Selling was a big passion. And definitely I want to at some stage go and build brands. So I was lucky that actually I got my first choice of profession. And I happened to stay in that for a very, very long period of time. Actually, most of my career, I happened to be there.
But what inspired you to shift to a lifestyle business altogether?
So in my career, if you see, my career has had a very interesting phase that I started off with Marico Industries and spent almost 13 years there, doing from the classical sales roles to heading sales in the sense becoming head of a region sales. Then I did a shift to marketing, then a long marketing stint there. But in between, after a large FMCG stint there, I actually did one stint in between also in telecom.
Okay.
So that's one first, I would say, foray into services happened in between for me, where I was with Idea Cellular as the CEO for Rajasthan Circle. And that taught me a pretty large interesting differences between what is FMCG and what is services. I came back actually after 3 years there at Idea back to FMCG, which normally people don't do. I came back to FMCG, obviously at a much more senior leadership role. I ended up becoming a CEO in GCPL for India and South Asia. And I can tell you at that time when I came back to GCPL, I got a lot of learnings from services sector by being in telecom.
Okay.
So I can very clearly see at that time my second FMCG stint was really a hybrid of learning, which I picked up in a relatively short but very impactful stint in telecom sector. In fact, when I came back, I put together a note for myself and team saying, fast-moving consumer goods versus furiously moving consumer services. So I called it a note called FMCG versus FMCS. And I actually said what we maybe don't realize in FMCG, and FMCG marketeers are very proud marketeers. I'm a very proud marketeer. I still have my all roots in FMCG. But at the time we realized that while there is a fast moving pace that we do in FMCG, the services move at a much more furious, almost daily pace. And that's why I thought there are a lot of learnings one can take from the furious move at which the services move, whether it be telecom, whether it be retail, whether it be banking, whether it be airlines, for example, wherever services or hospitality, wherever services are there, and there can be a lot of learning which FMCG also can get from services, and vice versa. I ended up applying some of those learnings into my second stint as at GCPL and Godrej, and that really helped me, grow as even as a FMCG professional. So I think that's the piece which always in my mind was left with. The pace of services was always at the back of my mind, which was always there. And
when you were growing in FMCG, you had learned, you had implied the learnings also. Then how come retail altogether? Lifestyle retail, that too.
Yeah, okay. So obviously, I'll tell you what, I didn't think I came to, Raymond because it was retail. I think I came to Raymond because it was Raymond. Okay, because see, I'm very passionate about, building brands. And I thankfully, with the help of a great team in GCPL, I could contribute to building some very, very iconic brands there, which got launched in that team and then got built. And I could make my own contribution, but obviously the work of a great team out there. So this is a great opportunity now to serve and be rather at the helm of a very, very iconic brand of this nation. So just like, I had, and I've had always the fortune of working on some very iconic brands in my life, right from my early days. When I was in Marico, I worked on a very iconic brand called Parachute. Yeah. Right? Then Saffola. Then I was in GCPL, got a chance to work with brands and lead brands like Goodnight, Hit, Synthol. Again, a very strong male brand, So then here came another opportunity of, working out a transformational piece at Raymond. And even in GCPL, when I joined it in 2011, there was a transformation journey which was, calling me at that time. And I had a very, very satisfying 11 years at GCPL where we could transform GCPL from level A to a very, very modern, progressive, a very strong brand and sales-led organization. And then when this opportunity came calling, I thought Raymond was at the time obviously coming out of a very tough COVID time, which had impacted all retailers in a bad way. So Raymond was no exception. And the brand has, like what, one line which always stays with me, when I had met Mr. Singhania first time, he told me one line that Raymond is a national asset, So we are into our 100th year right now. We're just beginning our 100th year. So he said there are very few, and we discussed it, that there are very few brands which, thrive after 100 years, let alone survive 100 years, right? So I think that's the reason I joined. I said, okay, here comes a brand which is truly embedded in nation's psyche, which has been actually a fashion coach to Indian men over decades and decades, and has led thoughtful fashion trends in this country. And there is definitely a transformational journey which is happening at Raymond, and which was the vision that we are playing out. So I thought this was a great opportunity. It happened to be a retail brand. It happened to be also a non-retail brand. We have both sides to Raymond. That, I think, to be very honest, came as a second, calling in my head. But the first was the opportunity to be at a great brand.
So what I'm understanding is that you love to work for brands which are very close to consumers' hearts, actually. Yeah. And that way you can relate to consumers and understand them in a better way. So I want to understand, what were the consumer expectations at that point of time when you were a part of FMCG, and now when you are part of retail with Raymond? How have you seen the consumer expectations changing over the time?
So are you talking about the difference between a consumer, how they resonate or engage with a FMCG sector versus a retail sector, or are you talking over a period of time?
Over a period of time.
Yeah, because because there are two different things I've learned. So one is, like, I've been in FMCG itself over 2 decades, Yeah. So there are obviously consumer behaviors which have changed over time while being in the same sector itself. Yeah. Because consumers evolve, social fabric of the country evolves, environmental trends evolve, and they all, impact consumer behavior. So let me first, and then the second change which I've seen is obviously once you move from a pure play consumer products brand to a lifestyle apparel brand. There are two different categories, and there also the consumer behavior changes because consumer react with different categories differently. So first, let me tell you, within the same category of FMCG or sector of FMCG, how consumer trends changed over a period of time. So I think the first and foremost trend which has become very tough, and I used to joke with my marketing teams there, I said I think we were very lucky to be brand managers in a different era, that the life was very, very simple in everything, and especially when we reflected hindsight, it seems simple because there was no fragmentation in, let's say, late 90s and early 2000s when I would have been a brand manager or a marketing head. Consumers were not, there was no so strong fragmentation in consumer behavior. Consumer behavior used to be pretty linear, right? Which is all what we would have learned in by and large marketing textbooks, that you had to make consumers aware of your brand in a very strong way. It has to have enough differentiation to start coming into consumers' consideration set, and then consumer would be tempted to try it. And if your product is good, if product is reasonably differentiated, you will get a retention and loyalty. Over the last, I think, 10, 15 years, what's really happened in this country is all kinds of fragmentation have happened. And that's, I think, impacting every sector. But I would say over the time, the biggest change is, first of all, the consumer journey in terms of the way technology has come in, has completely fragmented the consumer journey of interacting with brands. So the today consumer can get awareness of a brand on physical space. It can get the awareness of the brand from a digital space. It can get awareness of a brand from within digital, either performance marketing space or a completely social space. So you can get to experience the brand at multiple spaces, the awareness part. After that, your discovery of the brand can be on a completely different platform. You as a marketer can't even predict it. So you can't predict, okay, if the guy has, if he or she has first time got awareness of, let's say, Raymond at, myraymond.com. There is no guarantee that the product discovery will happen on myraymond.com. The product discovery could very well happen at a multi-brand outlet. Forget my own, the Raymond shop. Now that's the complete Pandora's box it opens up. Okay, because the way your brand comes across in a multi-brand outlet is many times not a very controlled environment. Right? So you can't control it. Or the person could do the reverse as well. So in a nutshell, what happens is the consumer journey is a complete zigzag now. That's a very, very fundamental challenge for anybody who's going to handle brands. That then what it means is that you have to be on the move and always on ready for a consumer experience in every platform that you think your TG could come on. That's a very humongous task, and it's not an easy task. And while there's enough technology to kind of give you aids, but yeah, it does become tougher. That's, I think, the single biggest change. The second thing which this fragmentation does is it makes the money part much more expensive. So the cost of acquisition of a customer, which was in the earlier times, was much more simpler. You had one media, you had one by and large channel, reasonable predictability, less fragmentation. The cost of a consumer, which is so moving on in multiple non-linear journeys, the cost of acquisition also becomes higher because everything is fragmented. So I think those are really, really big changes. And I think the third piece which has changed here is the emergence of pure play digital brands. It's a different world out there, right? And those are competitions which you have to be ready to compete. But yeah, it's a very different DNA to be a digital brand, and it's a very different DNA to be a physical brand.
So two questions from what you said. I mean, there are problems which the brands are facing these days, obviously you highlighted. So what steps are you taking to actually combat those problems and come up with solutions? What are those solutions like?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd say they are not problems, because the problem is a very negative word.
Challenges?
Yeah, these are challenges, and in every generation, see, while I very simply put it that, okay, our lives were simple and all, there were challenges of different kind there, Okay, let me tell you the challenge that you didn't have data at that time. Data throws a lot of power also, right? Data can be a great aid as well to take decisions, So the challenge was used to operate in a very data dark space at that time. Big challenge tha, right? So I think, the challenges are always there, but these are the new challenges of current, let's say, decade or generation. I would say definitely decade, I would say. And obviously generations change happens every time, So I think the biggest thing here always, and I think while a lot of changes happen across generations, across decades, some with technology, in fact, decades also becoming a long period. The changes happen actually, I would say, every 3 years now, right? So I think decade is just too long a period in today's life because the digital technology evolves so fast. I think one thing which I fundamentally believe is at the core, which makes our life simpler, is that finally you're dealing with emotions. See, वो कभी नहीं बदलने वाला. The fact is, who you're selling to finally, or who you're convincing, or who you're advocating to come and engage and hopefully purchase your brand and be a consumer, is somebody with a heart out there, right? It's not a technology mind alone which is buying you. Even if you use tons and tons of technology to discover, decipher, engage with the brands, the last decision which happens now happens with the consumer with the heart.
True.
That never changes. And that I think is the piece you can never ever forget, no matter how much technology will evolve. Because let's talk about life and space. One thing obviously which e-commerce has done, let's say, is that bargain hunting has become a much more easier piece.
Yeah.
Earlier you would go to a shop, sale lagegi, tab jayenge. Now it can be an always on bargain hunting. You don't have to go anywhere. It's raining, it's heat. You can order from the comfort of home. But it's not true that every consumer is in a bargain hunting mode all the time.
Yeah.
Consumers can be in a bargain hunting mode sometime. Some consumers may not be in a bargain hunting mode at any time, right? But even if you're in a bargain hunting mode, you have the two products which are same getting to you at 30% discounts. There are many times when a product is at 40% discount and 30. In case of, let's say, apparel or a jacket or a shirt, finally the first foremost thing is I have to like the design.
True.
If I don't like the design, even if it's 80% off to me, I'm not going to touch it, right?
True.
So we place, obviously there's a value for money, bargain pieces do come into place. But what is at the core is that I need to feel good about wearing that design.
True.
Right? That never changes. So the product, the design, and the way you connect with the consumer makes a difference. Similarly, the communication, that is what matters after product. The way you can communicate the same soap, same hair color, the same jacket, the same shirt in 100 different ways as a consumer. You can be a very rational, matter of fact, cut and dry product communication. Some people will connect to that. It can be a very, very emotionally engaging connect itself. So there are multiple pieces of connecting.
Yeah.
Consumers connect with communication. Different people connect differently. Now that fact is never going to change. So I would say when you say the challenges, I think coming back to answer your question, why I built this little bit of preamble was that never ever forget that finally it is emotions that play. Right? We need to leverage technology. In fact, I mean, leverage technology to understand how you can better connect with emotions at play, rather than letting technology be the replacement for engagement of consumers.
True.
So I think that's a fundamental, I would say, principle don't ever forget. Having said that, technology is a great aid. I can tell you, us वक्त data नहीं मिलता था. Today I can get so much of data. I can tell you in Raymond here, which I tell teams here that, the kind of data which retailers carry through their CRM pool is any brand manager's delight, that you can die for that kind of analytics and insights that can come out to you. Now, this is what you need to build on. You need to leverage data. You need to have better analytics. But for what? To get better insights. And then use those insights to connect with the consumer. Not कि मेरे को data मिल गया, I can't be a data junkie and just say data. Finally, the data has to lead to somewhere, how do I get this guy better? I think so that's it. So prepare for technology, leverage technology, which we are doing in very multiple ways. But finally, remember, all this is to the end of engaging with consumers.
Sunil, you have talked about the challenges that the various categories or where the various segments of retail are facing. I want to understand one biggest challenge that you faced in your professional life and what did you do to solve that problem? And was it a career changing decision or maybe something like that, which was a challenge for you maybe?
No, so let me tell you. So this challenge, So I take back to one of the earlier service sector stints, which I would say one of the most challenging times of my life since you're talking. Not that I didn't face any great challenge in Godrej, where I had so many challenges. Raymond, I'm facing so many challenges. But since you're asking me one, which is a very big one, I would talk about my stint at Idea Rajasthan. So sometimes, first of all, ignorance is bliss in life. Right? That's why I tell my teams here also that it's sometimes good not to be from the sector, because then you come with no blinkers. You can ask very stupid questions even if you're a CEO. People know कि ठीक है, नहीं पता, पहले समझने में time लगेगा. So an idea that happened, and I always okay, let me tell you what happened, and then maybe I'll tell you what my learning out of that was. It was a circle which at that time in telecom was called a challenger circle in the internal terminology. And the challenger circle was that we were a late entrant to that geography of Rajasthan. We were on a different megahertz versus the incumbents, which what it did basically from a consumer point of view, that the coverage of a tower which you were putting versus the coverage of a tower which at a different megahertz the incumbent had put was very different. So what does this do? For the same cost of running an infrastructure tower, the addressable market, if it was, let's say, 100, here because the coverage of that technology was lower, the addressable market of the network, the reach of the network, it was 1/2. Now that's the first challenge. Your cost structure same, everything is same, but you can only reach half of people. So your addressable market is 50%. And so it's like getting tied up with one hand and you have to do boxing. The second was that the network was a little patchy, that it was not a contiguous network. It was built in different geographies at a different periods of time. So just to give an example, you would have a great network in Jaipur, but the moment you go to Jaipur, your network will be a little weaker. Now, when as you and me as consumers, we don't like changing networks when you're traveling, I would rather be latched on to one and have that service. Now that was another constraint. So this is the second constraint which happened, that you have less addressable market for the same cost structure, so you have to manage. Second is, you don't have a contiguity of network. Now, if you see these two itself, and the third constraint which my boss had put at that saying, because it was a circle which obviously was bleeding, and it's a high capex circle. He said, Sunil, I can support you in everything, I can give you everything. The only thing you don't ask me for till you break even is don't ask me for more capex. So that was again hands tied, that you can't ask for more network in the first maybe 18 months or so, right? So that's, if you see, was the mother of all challenge, that how do I fight this battle? So I guess, one thing which maybe one philosophy now I want to bring in the table, which I'm very, very firm believer of, is that, when you don't have resources, you become resourceful, right? So this is a line which is one of my favorite lines, कि जब resources नहीं हो तो आदमी resourceful हो जाता है, right? Because then you start thinking differently. And then we talked about this term which I introduced to the teams, which is, which we are talking a lot here, is having a challenger mindset. And as part of this resourcefulness, doing possibility thinking. So the philosophy we talk to teams is, क्योंकि ये तो reality है अभी. Now we don't have a great capex, not able to expand network. This is the way a network is. So how do you fight this battle out? We got into a hurdle, and there I think this whole challenger mindset really came into play. So we talked about things like, okay, let's say in the Jaipur we have the best in class, actually the latest network, the highest quality network. So there's no problem of, let's say, the coverage. There is no problem of contiguity, and large chunk of consumers must be operating only within the city itself. That they hardly go out. So there we talked of building pieces, saying, okay, how we can make sure that you become the most preferred brand in the places that you are in. So that became a redefinition of the problem. ठीक है, जो नहीं कर सकते उसको नहीं, but can you be the most preferred brand given you have the best service? You will be seen as the best service guy. You can be seen the best network with the least of outages, least of coverages problem. And obviously then can you become a very great price value equation can you give? So we did some pieces on that also at that time. There's this per second billing piece which came into play. We happened to be a bit lucky there that we got chosen as the first circle to try that out, right? So doing a lot of this possibility thinking, focusing on the problem of what you can do, things like service, things like better coverage, things like distribution, things like a right price value equation, and local brand building. I think that's the pieces that the team focused on. And we said we'll win this micro battles. Obviously one piece which came handy at that time is that the industry shifted to something called per second billing. Suddenly, I don't know whether you remember that disruption happened. We became one of the first circles with an idea to test it out. Because it's very difficult for incumbents to suddenly to get let go of that kind of profits. We leveraged that opportunity like a challenger. And that became a turning point for that circle. That within a matter of, I think, 30 odd days before others rushed in to copy us, we acquired maybe 5 or 6 times of our normal consumer base. So in a nutshell, I think it was a problem which was so much out of our control. It was so much of constraints that were put onto you. But I think the team really came out of saying, okay, these are given to me. Ab iske andar what I can do, can I behave as a challenger and can I create my own resourcefulness? I think that's really won the day. And finally, I believe in any assignment, finally what matters is the execution.
So you turn challenges into opportunities that way.
Yeah. So I think that's something which is so that's become my very favorite, term in my heart, which I always carry with me everywhere, is this whole piece of what I call possibility thinking and challenger mindset. These are two terms very close to my heart, and I've seen the power of that in every stint post idea that I've experienced, whether it's GCPL, whether it's here now, that you have to be a challenger mindset. And the biggest struggle I can tell you, when you're a leader brand, it's very difficult for leader and legacy brands to not be arrogant and to always behave like a challenger. Like I always say one line, that to remain a leader, you have to stay a challenger.
So Sunil, when we're talking about challenges and challenger word we are using so much and so many other things, so to understand, when we talk about D2C brands or the new age brands that like you touched upon, they want to grow up at a very fast pace. They want to spend on marketing left, right and center. Whereas we talked about established brands that like you have worked for, they build their businesses for long term. They think about longevity, sustainability and profitability side by side. What do you think is the right way to disrupt the market and go ahead, or build sustainably and profitability and then go ahead?
Okay, D2C or digital brands is one way of communicating, or I would say accessing consumers, right? It's a brand. But if you see, there are many FMCG brands which have taken the D2C first route and become reasonably successful. Many have fallen by the way, right? Well, the product is FMCG. Similarly, we have seen, I would say in apparel business, we are seeing a lot of D2C brands coming into play, growing. They may not have any offline presence itself. But again, if you see, D2C versus offline, there is no right or wrong formula of where do you start first. It's a matter of choice. You have to first, on both the platforms, be very clear that what is the product proposition or the service proposition which will click with the consumers. If you don't have, you can be a great brand, you can spend crazy monies on digital platforms, convey very easily with a Gen Z or a millennial who are very digitally first kind of consumers. But if your product is not differentiated, or if your service is not differentiated, the proposition is weak, it will fall by the wayside. We celebrate a lot of these D2C brands which have become very successful, but for every one brand which has succeeded, there must be 90 which have failed, which we never hear about. That tells you again the power of one thing. It's not about the technology alone. It is about first and foremost getting the product / service proposition right. The same holds true for any offline brand as well. So I think that is one piece which in this whole debate I don't like, is that ye D2C ka brand hai or ye offline brand hai. I don't like this because the first and foremost thing, whether it's an offline brand which has been successful or whether it's an online brand which is successful, one common thread is they got the consumer piece right. What clicks?
Consumer was the king, consumer is the king.
Yeah, so don't forget that. Like, whether it's the price value equation, they got it right, whether they got the portfolio right, whether they got the communication piece with they got it right. Whether they got the last mile logistics right. Even that is the consumer piece, that I can give you a cash on delivery option is what? It is not a logistics choice if you ask me.
Yeah.
It is the single biggest insight which is of consumers, that Indian consumers, COD is a very natural, it's a very Indian phenomena.
Yeah.
It's a very typical Indian insight here. Indians are not very large credit card users, especially when you go to smaller towns. Credit card hota hi nahi hai, right? They don't have that net credit worthiness to this thing. And they're very wary of using credit cards even in the large masses in India still. So they can't do a cash transaction in advance. So what you do is a very bold insight, a bold call can be taken on that insight is, ठीक है, पैसा हमको delivery पे देना, because that is the way you do it with the physical outlet.
Yeah.
It's a common insight which got converted into one consumer action or service called COD. That's the point which I'm making. That could be seen, if there is no COD, I can tell you the online business would not be here.
Really?
Not to this level. Because, for example, today, in majority of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, kahan hai credit cards?
True.
Yeah, the GPAs and the UPIs are happening now. In the last post-COVID time, it's really taken off. That's giving you an first alternate digital payment route today. But usse pehle kahan tha ye? So without the advent of UPI, if it was only a credit card-led transaction, there is no way online businesses in India would have flourished.
So digital businesses or digital has got impetus during the COVID times only.
Yeah.
So technology, digitalism, and I mean so many things happening. Technology is moving at a very fast pace. It is helping brands to grow. But what if it takes your job one day and replaces you? What will you do then?
I'm very happy actually, No, I have a second passion which I would love to do at any day. I would love to go. I love to teach at some stage.
What would you love to teach?
Okay, so I definitely would like to go back to see, I have got a lot of experiences in my life over the year, which like everybody has, where when you reflect back in your career journeys and corporate journeys, and now maybe I'm in the stage that I have a lot to look back upon, and when I interact with this new batch of newcomers who come from B schools into our organizations, you realize there are many things I hope somebody would have told me when I was entering the corporate world कि ये चीज़ें ऐसे कभी pan out नहीं होती हैं, which can never be taught you in any book. And there are many things which you'll learn, which are experiences, life, and certain ways of being as humans and as leaders will teaches you. So I think one thing I love doing and which really like to spend more time is on sharing some of the pieces of how to shape some of your own career, how to approach future of your careers, and how to handle challenges which come your way from a non-bookish way, if I were to call it anything else. That's something which I really like interacting and sharing, because I think that is something which I feel if some of these experiences I had got maybe a little earlier in life, maybe some parts of my life and maybe some parts of my career, I could have handled differently. So I like interacting with, youngsters, students. I like spending time with them. I like conversing with them because you also get to know a lot about their current generational points of views when you interact. It's not a one-way street. So I think, I would actually go to maybe taking time off to teach, maybe not full-time, but part-time sometimes.
So 3 values that you would love to imbibe into them.
3 values? Okay, the first and foremost value, very clearly, I call it the lessons of my life, and actually in GCPL when I used to have, and it's a very simple answer I can give you, but in GCPL, when we used to have this large batch of management trainees who used to come in, almost 30, 40 of them, I used to do only one presentation, the first CEO interaction with them. It was a 5-slide presentation called Lessons of My Life. Okay, so my lesson number 1 is, that life is not fair because it is never supposed to be fair. So we crib a lot about this. Arey yaar, usko mil gaya, you're not deserving, isko mil gaya, and you spend a lot of time in this politicking, in this heartburns. But the fact is, life is never supposed to be fair. And then the grudge happens when you are at the wrong end of the stick. You're saying, life fair nahi hai. The guy who studied the least has got the best placement in campus. Okay. Life is not fair because it was never supposed to be fair. So you have to do what is in your hand. That's lesson 1 value I'll say. Don't crib, take life as it comes.
Yeah.
Second value I would like to give, I really put on the paper is, okay, again, it's a formula which I put for myself is, finally life is a balance of, I call it 2/3, 1/3. You can put any percentage to it, that is immaterial. That there is something called what is your hand, and there's something called hand of God.
Yeah.
Life is a mix of both, right? I think 1/3 is hand of God in everybody's life. 2/3 is yours. So the second value I tell people is respect the hand of God, but take charge of your own hand. Because a 2/3 is something which is very large still, and that you give your best. And what you will find, and which I have experienced, is that at 1/3 which is not in your hand, by and large plays evenly out. That God is pretty kind. That there's certain things you'll find you are at the wrong place at the wrong time. And all of us would have experiences, and there are many times you'll find you actually get what you think you may not have deserved by being at the right place at the right time. So I believe that end of life when you hang your boots, you'll find that 1/3 by and large is played out fairly, right? what you will be at the end of it is a large part, which is 2/3. So that's the second principle I will give people. So this hand of God philosophy, which I always have. And the third thing I would say is never lose sight of an authenticity. It's a very important human value. People forget that in this struggle of this. Always be authentic. Always be authentic to your own conscience. The rest will be taken care of.
Sunil, the thoughts that you are sharing, I mean, they are so interesting. I'm loving each and everything, but we have a hard stop. I mean, the time is running. So I would love to ask a last question from you, and then we'll have a quick rapid fire after that. What values have you learned here at Raymond, and how are they helping you grow the business and you as a person?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest value at Raymond, which I have really heard, is there is this huge sense of the value of pride in the organization, in the brand, So, that really galvanizes everybody. You can have a lot of differences in large legacy organizations. They tend to be silos. You can get, slowed down. So that's in fact one thing which I'm trying to transform. How to build more agility as a challenger. But one thing which unites this place is there is a crazy sense of pride about Raymond being a brand which is one of the most loved brands in this country. So I think that sense of pride matters. And we have seen that in the most toughest of times. It's pride, sometimes pride of being Indian, pride of being an Indian cricket team, or pride of being a certain community that can fire up and bring very different results. So I think that's the one real big value which I see. The sense of pride in being Raymond and what has built Raymond together. I think that drives us forward a lot. So that how, the biggest thing is, we have been relevant for 100 years. That pride takes us forward to say how we'll thrive and be relevant for the next 100 years.
Really looking forward to that, Sunil. So before we wrap up our quick rapid fire, I will not give you time to think about it. One favorite business book that you have read, and what have you learned from that?
Yeah, okay. So this book will be this book called Eating the Big Fish by, I think, Adam Morgan. I picked up this book in London, actually in one of the conferences. That book is a brilliant book about how challenger brands and organizations are disrupting the leaders. It's a beautiful book. It's a book all about this challenger mindset.
Like we were talking about right now, that consumer is actually at all the places, like they're omni-channel. Where do you prefer to shop from, online or offline?
Okay, I'm a guy who loves experiences. I want to have that touch, feel, and basically I want to relate all 5 senses to the experience I do. So nothing beats traditional retail in that sense, because you really, all senses get stimulated.
One retailer or retail brand that you love the most?
See, one brand I love a lot, I respect a lot, I don't know whether it's in a way a retail brand, is this brand called The Honest Company. I think Jessica Alba's brand, I think what I like about that brand is it's a brand which got built from scratch, and it's a brand which started how as a genesis saying, okay, can I have products which are genuinely honest and authentic in their formulations and what they promise? Because let's face it, otherwise there are a lot of smokes and mirrors in the claims that products make over a period of time, So I think the way that brand has been built on a pillar of authenticity, and it's in fact folded into its own brand name, I think that's something which the journey itself is admirable,
Okay, my last question. Everybody knows that you are known for building brands. You're the CEO of Raymond Lifestyle Limited. What do you do in your free time?
Okay, so in my free time, when I really got free time and I can still reflect, so I will take 2 parts to it. One, which is the weekends and all, I actually take time off to, relax in terms of by taking long walks. I actually try to keep myself fit. So that really helps me just unwind from the challenge of the business. So I think this walking, taking long drives, short stints at gyms, maybe more intensive ones, that fitness piece is a very important piece I do on weekends. When I get some more time, which is more reflective, I like to write poetry in Hindi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Can we close it with a poem of yours?
So it was a very inspirational thing of positivity I wrote for the team called Savera Laenge. The line says, "Jitne bhi andhere chayenge, hum cheer ke savera laenge." Right? Ye shatru hai kuch anjana, because we didn't know what COVID was at the time. Adrish, prabal aur hewana. Sanyam dhar, sankalp kar. ये दोनों शस्त्र ही इसे मिटाएंगे. हम जितने भी अंधेरे छाएंगे, हम चीर के सवेरा लाएंगे. It's a long poem around it.
Wonderfully said. I mean, everybody is striving to finish the darkness from their lives and move towards the light. This is the crux of the poem, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a whole about that we're fighting some unknown battle, unknown warrior, enemy here.
Yeah.
So what all we need to do at that time to fight this darkness, where finally there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, wonderfully said, Sunil. It was pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot today from you. Whatever you said, I mean, each word was a wisdom for me, and I hope the audience has also learned a lot. And you loved the way he interacted with us, told stories, untold stories. And if you liked it, please do share it on your social media channels. Till then, we'll be back again next week with a new retailer, new story. Till then, bye-bye.